What is up, everybody, and welcome to CTW Live. I am your host, Seamus Zarlingo, and alongside of me today, Inangelo, our special guest, and of course, co-host over there on the other side of me, Griffin Aldrich. But we welcome into the show Inangelo, who just recently, folks, came up with his 2025 top 100. Got to give you some respect on the top 100, Ian. The top 100 NBA players list, rankings, whatever you want to call it. But Ian, you dove in to the top 100 players in the NBA, and this is what it looks like on screen here. This is the top 100 player list, and if people have to pause it, people have to sit here for a second. We'll leave it up on the screen, but this is coming straight from Ian Inangelo's Instagram page. Everybody go check out Ian Inangelo on all social media platforms, including Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. This comes straight from Ian's Instagram page, and this is Ian's 2025 top 100 NBA player list. Kind of taking a second to marinate in it here as we look at the list. But as we go on and talk about this list further on into the program, we'll get into more of the details when it comes to the rankings and every single player. But if somebody needs to pause, if people need to pause, go ahead and pause this. We'll, of course, be live. Leaving it up on the screen here for a second before we get into the discussion over this entire list. But bringing us back here, Ian, I want to ask the question, what inspired you to make this list? I've made top 100 player lists in the past before. Obviously, we've seen a lot of them out there from other people, but what inspired you to make this specific list in the middle of the summer?
Yeah, so I mean, right now there's not really a whole lot going on. Summer League just ended. So normally every year around this time, I normally make a top 100 list. I did it the last couple years in 2023 and 2024. So this year, just carrying on the tradition, and yeah, that's pretty much where it comes from. Honestly, I like making lists. Honestly, Sometimes I don't agree with other lists that come out every year when it comes to the top 100s. So the fact that I can make my own list is normally the reason why I make these kind of things.
And, and what was, and what was some of the criteria going into your list? Obviously, everybody has their own sort of mental ranking system for players and how they rank anything in life. Let's face it. But what were some of the biggest factors contributing to the construction of your list overall?
Yeah, so normally what I do is I look at the Ringers top 100 list because out of all of them, I feel like that's the best one that I've seen personally. So like I'll go over their list, see what I agree with, and then I'll kind of rank my personal list based on who I think is better. And obviously this is when players are healthy too. So
Yeah.
as you know, there are guys like Tatum and Halliburton and Embiid who might not play. These are all healthy, obviously. So this is kind of where I would have them ranked heading into this season that we're just now going into the 25-26 season. So as of right now, this is how I would rank all of these players.
Well, I have to ask too. I mean, that's impressive, and I like what you said there. Kind of, on the fact that I don't agree with a lot of them, so let me make my own. That works perfectly. But my question too is, how much time and effort did you just spend making this list? Because I have to admit, 100 players is a lot of time. I mean, yeah, you kind of had that for example, but how long did it ultimately take to make that whole list?
I've been definitely working on this for probably at least the last week or so. At least the list itself, I guess, wasn't maybe the hardest part. It was definitely trying to think of other people that could be on the list that I might have forgotten. That probably took the most time because I feel like I had a general consensus of what I thought I wanted the list to look like. I was pretty happy with the way that went. I was just kind of thinking to myself other players that possibly could make it, and if a certain player was better than this other player kind of thing. That's the thing that really takes the most time is just kind of like as you're working on it and as you're putting together a graphic, you're like, oh, maybe this guy is better than this guy. So you kind of change it really quickly, or like this guy is too low, too high, whatever. So that's probably the thing that takes the most time when it comes to making like a top 100 list.
Yeah, and I have one more question on top of that is, did this all originate from, you're sitting down, you're chilling? Was this one of those board ideas that you're like, hey, I'm going to make my own list? Was that what it originated as? Or?
No, for sure. A couple of years ago, it definitely originated as like, I'm bored, I want something to do. Top 10 lists at like each position are, it's fine. Like I used to make all of them before I did like a top 100 kind of thing, but I just decided to do the top 100 this time. So it was
Oh no. Why is she
Breaking news. We have some breaking news, folks. We have a Boston Celtics roster transaction. Breaking.
Ooh.
Per Keith Smith, the Boston Celtics announced they have waived J.D. Davison.
Wow.
Well, let's change directions real quick on this one because we have to react. We'll get back to this list in a moment, folks. We'll get back to this list, but we do have to react to this J.D. Davison news. J.D. Davison, no longer a Boston Celtic, picked back in the 2022 NBA draft in the second round by the Celtics, resided on a two-way contract the last 3 seasons with the Celtics before attaining a standard spot at the end of the 24-25 season, and now J.D. Davison has been waived by the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics waived J.D. Davison, who I mentioned during Summer League. J.D. Davison, he was a potential wave candidate, right? A potential cut candidate for the Celtics, considering the fact his contract was non-guaranteed and officially was going to be guaranteed on January 10th. That was his guarantee date, was January 10th, 2026. And if the Celtics waive J.D. Davison before that date, they pay no money to J.D. Davison in the 25-26 season. And now the Celtics come up with the roster spot, save a little bit of cash, and J.D. Davison needs a new home elsewhere. What are your guys' initial thoughts on this one? Ian, we'll start with you.
Initial
Griffin,
thoughts,
I know you want to talk
lie.
because I know this is Griffin's guy, but we'll let you go first here, Ian.
Initial thoughts, I'm not going to lie to you, doesn't shock me at all. I was kind of surprised they even signed him back to a contract in the first place, if I'm being honest. Not because he's bad. I just don't think he was ever going to have a role in Boston. And with the way that a guy like Charles Bassey performed in Summer League, I think you're going to see him getting signed to a contract pretty soon, if I had to guess, just because of the way that he performed, and he kind of showed out. Plus, the Celtics, front court depth has a lot to be desired. So that's my first thoughts when I see it. But yeah, it does kind of suck. He's G League MVP, one of the first. Well, was he the first Brad Stevens draft pick? I think so.
Yes, he was. 2022. I'm blanking on the pick. Was it 55th overall? Was it all the way down there in the draft?
It was like 54, 55, something like that. But yeah.
Let's get the official. Also, I want to note this too. The Celtics officially dip back down under the second apron with this move. So the Celtics get out of the second apron, and he was 53rd overall. 53rd. So
okay.
53rd overall in 2022. But Griffin, I know you have a lot of thoughts on this one. What is your initial take on the Celtics waiving J.D. Davison?
Well, I mean, Ian already kind of said it. It makes you question, is Charles Bassey now a name that the Celtics are like, all right, we got to obtain him? But it also is like, it's confusing to me how early they did this. Obviously, they don't want to have a guy like Charles Bassey float around, but I don't know if that's the move that they make, obviously. Who knows? But you look at this and it's kind of like, wow, it's shocking that they didn't wait till training camp until this, because if you're going to sign him back to a deal, then should he kind of prove his talents at training camp first? Because it makes you wonder what's going on behind the scenes, because why would they do it this early? Is there a name that they're looking at? It's a lot more question marks. I think that, because it's like, would you kind of see what he could do during training camp and then make a move? Or I don't know. It's definitely question marks for me personally. But
Well, that's where I look at this and go, there must be a correlating move somewhere on the horizon, because if they're waiving him before training camp, that means the Celtics want to welcome in somebody to the roster who they want at training camp over JD Davison. And ultimately, this move too, this isn't a correlating move, but another move to be mentioned here, as my cat Meow Meow does her thing and meows in the background, if anybody can hear that. But ultimately, there was another move, another piece of news out there. Jaden Springer. All right, Jaden Springer, the Utah Jazz waived Jaden Springer. Do the Celtics want Jaden Springer back? I don't know. I'm saying I'm probably not on that front. But but there was some related news out there. I'll also mention this with JD Davison as well. G League MVP. So the G League MVP we talked about last season. How much weight does it actually hold in the NBA rankings? Well, apparently none at all, if any. Like I'm just saying, because the G League MVP JD Davison, he was just waived by the Boston Celtics, unfortunately for himself. I would say JD, likely there will be other opportunities professionally for him, whether that's
Oh man.
overseas or elsewhere amongst the NBA rankings. But JD Davison no longer a Boston Celtic, and to me it signals potentially a move on the horizon for the Celtics soon, whether it's at the end of July or even August. And I'm not saying it's going to be a big move, but now the Celtics, there's one open roster spot there. There's that 15th spot. And the Celtics, I understand teams want to keep that 15th roster spot open, but I go back and I lean on what Griffin said. Why wouldn't the Celtics just do that after training camp?
There's
You know
definitely
what?
And Jordan
I was
Walsh
gonna
is one of
say,
those players as well. Jordan Walsh's guarantee date is opening night, so he could be another player who's waived later on in time. Just
you
saying.
know, you know what someone told me? They said they're thinking that Ben Simmons might be the reason why.
Who's telling you
Because
that?
I don't know, it was just people sending me stuff, but because there was a report earlier that happened that Ben Simmons was linked to as like one of the few people that was getting looked at by the Celtics. It was like the Celtics and the Kings were linked to Ben Simmons recently, so I don't think that's going to happen, but
that would make more
you
sense
never
than
know.
Charles Bassey, because I feel like Ben Simmons, he's a guy who, if there's guys actively looking at him, they could kind of go for him. So I mean, I feel like that makes more sense than a Charles Bassey, because there must be some talk behind the scenes on Charles Bassey potentially going to training camp with the Boston Celtics, and then eventually them maybe making room for another roster spot. So that makes sense with the whole Ben Simmons stuff. But the thing that I have to say too with JD Davison, and I expressed this on another podcast, is I do believe he will get time with an NBA team, because you just look at his sample size with the Boston Celtics, it's a lot less than even Jordan Walsh, and Baylor Shireman, obviously in 1 year's sample size, has had almost as much opportunities, I feel like, as JD Davison. So I don't doubt that he'll get an opportunity with another NBA team. Again, it's just confusing how this didn't happen in training camp, and it's like, all right, we're Seamus. It's like, when this all happened at once, it's like now we're expecting 3 or 4 more videos that we're going to have to do, because it's like, all right, there's going to be a whole chain of things, because again, Brad Stevens is 3 moves ahead of us right now. We don't know what's Brad Stevens doing.
Well, let me make this clear. This is why these correlating pieces, this is why I believe a move could be on the way for the Celtics. And when I say a move, again, not a big move, not a big trade deal, not a big signing, the biggest signing could be Ben Simmons, as you guys are talking about here. But the thing that makes me believe the Celtics are going to bring in another name, whether it could be Al Horford, let's face it, could be Al Horford. Who knows? It could be Al Horford. He could be returning to the Celtics. Jordan Walsh's guarantee date is opening night. He is another player who you could waive, and he would be a little more costly, but it's crumbs. Okay, his guarantee on his contract is $200,000. Okay, so the Celtics, I mentioned this at the end of postgame, at the end of summer league. If the Celtics waived both JD Davison and Jordan Walsh, they would only be paying $200,000 to both players, specifically Jordan Walsh, and that's the only money that would reside on the Celtics books in dead money, is the $200K. And again, that's crumbs. That's crumbs to the millions of dollars. And You think about the amount of allowable dead money on a team's books. It's $23 million. That's $200,000. That's very much crumbs. But the Celtics just waived J.D. Davison, so J.D. Davison opens up a roster spot. Theoretically, the Celtics can bring somebody in to that roster spot, whether it's Ben Simmons, Al Horford, another player like Charles Bassey out there, and they could still waive a player like Jordan Walsh later on down the line, open up a 15th roster spot, and even save themselves some cash to dip under that second apron. So the Celtics could easily make a move to add another name to the roster and still own the flexibility of keeping the last roster spot open and keeping the flexibility of maintaining themselves under the second apron. That's why I'm looking at a potential correlating move with this move right here, because the Celtics still own a chance to open up that roster spot with Jordan Walsh later on down the line. Now, I understand maybe the Celtics like Jordan Walsh, maybe they want to keep him around, but let's face it, Jordan Walsh is not going to be a deal breaker at the end of the day if the Celtics are under or over the second apron. If they want to add Ben Simmons or Al Horford or any one of those players, right? Jordan Walsh, he's not going to be a deal breaker. If the Celtics need to do what they need to do in order to attain what they want to do, right? They're going to part ways with Jordan Walsh, and that's just the reality of that situation. And it's the reality of this J.D. Davison situation too. I'm sure they were high on J.D. Davison. The Celtics were, considering he won G League MVP last season, considering he's been in the Celtics establishment and organization the last 3 seasons with the main Celtics predominantly, but with the Celtics a little bit too on that 2-way contract. But now, if you need to make the move in order to get under that second apron, and you need to make the move in order to open up that roster spot to add a guy like Al Horford or Ben Simmons or somebody else like a Charles Bassey, you go ahead and waive J.D. Davison, even if there was some inkling that they liked him in the building, right? If they liked him in the building, even if there was some of that, it's not necessarily worth the implications of both the finances with the second apron. I should say luxury tax number 1, but then the second apron number 2, and then furthermore the entire makeup of the roster and who you could potentially add at the back end. And when I say add at the back end, let's face it, if the Celtics add somebody like Simmons, Horford, or Bassey, they're going to be slotted in more to the main rotation. They're not going to be a 15th roster spot guy like J.D. Davison or Jordan Walsh, unfortunately.
Well, it makes you wonder too. You look at this and kind of it makes you think, and this is a question for another time, but are the Celtics likely now keeping Anthony Simons after this move? Because that's a guard. I mean, that's
another conversation for another day, but
totally. But
I wouldn't say that this move sways that in one way or the other.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, all I know is that Adam Elstag said that there's no imminent move coming for the Celtics. So,
no,
I guess it's just going to be more waiting and speculating until training camp starts again.
It's curious. It makes me curious though. Is there going to be a bigger move now though? Because again, why didn't they wait till training camp to waive J.D. Davison? Because he didn't play in summer league, so it's like we haven't seen what J.D. Davison can contribute this year coming off G League MVP. So it's like we haven't even seen any of that. So there must be a player out there that they're like, we need to get our hands on now, because J.D. Davison is gone before training camp. So that's just definitely one. I'm curious. We got to keep our eyes peeled now, because there might be some following breaking news upon this. That's why.
Well, not today. It feels like so.
Yeah.
No, well, I gotta say, remember we said this last night when Marty the Meat Man was on the podcast, which I don't know if that's released yet or not, but it will be released on the Celtics Nation Rising channel. But well, we said this yesterday. This is a danger zone, which
it is.
Okay, we have a rumor out there. We have a rumor, but that's not. It's about Jonathan Kuminga. I don't want to jump. We don't have to jump into.
I heard that. Yeah,
it's from NBA Central. It's a rumor. We don't have to jump into that news. But this is the danger zone. All right, we have reported every single transaction of the Celtics offseason live.
Even
not. We haven't gone live afterwards. We have been live for them. We've been live.
Even
We have our reactions for every single transaction. I mean, we're getting live reactions for every single transaction this offseason. I mean, we're on a roll. I mean, JD Davison, the latest example. However, before JD Davison, we were on your list, Ian, and now we have to change directions back to the entire NBA conversation and not just the Boston Celtics. We're going to talk about the entire NBA today. But Ian's list, this is how it reads, folks. Just any new viewers in here who weren't here earlier or who are looking at the title right now, wondering why are they talking about JD Davison on a top 100 NBA player list? Are they for real out here? Are they for real right now? No, we're talking about Ian's list here of every single NBA player. However, diving into this list, right, Ian? We're gonna go by tens. We're gonna go 100 to 91, and then so on and so forth. But starting at 100 and going down, we have at 100, Ian, you have Aaron Nesmith, 99, DeAndre Hunter, 98, Dylan Brooks, 97, DeAndre Ayton, 96, Jalen Duran, 95, Tumani Kamara, 94, Josh Giddey, 93, Christian Brown, 92, Jalen Green, and 91, Bradley Beal. So that's what numbers 100 through 91, that's what it looks like for Ian. And Ian, if you want to take us through 100 to 91, what were some of your thoughts behind that area of the list?
Yeah, so this was kind of like a bottom tier. These were just kind of guys who, it's one of those things where it's like I would, maybe some people would leave them off of the top 100 because of their recent play, or maybe they're a young guy who like hasn't completely broken out yet, but I feel like I have faith in them that they could eventually uh, make a higher spot on the list. But honorable mentions I had to the list. These were feedback that I got from other people and like some that I thought of. Uh, Balil Coulibaly from Washington, Mitchell Robinson, Brandon Miller, Malcolm Brogdon, Colin Sexton, Malik Monk, Clay Thompson, and Sar Thompson. So those are honorable mentions that I had from either people telling me that they probably could have been on the list, or just like people that I thought of that were on the list in years past that didn't make it this year. But yeah, 100 was kind of the hardest one. I put Aaron Nesmith just because of the playoff heroics, Celtics ties. It's
I was
kind
gonna
of
say anything else there?
it's
Anything other than the playoff heroics?
it's a cop out to put there. But I mean, compared to the other guys, I mean, the only person that really compared was like Balil Coulibaly, that like maybe could have been there. So it's an okay spot for 100. DeAndre Hunter, Dylan Brooks, DeAndre Ayton, they're all going to be guys who are going to be maybe contributors on a team. I don't know exactly, but at the same time, I feel like they're still top 100 players in my mind. Tumani Kamara, I think, has a chance to be really good, and I think he can break out into something big this year. So that's why I had him at 95. Josh Giddey, I don't really believe in that much. Christian Brown, I didn't really know where to put him. He feels like a contributor, but I also feel like he's also a little limited in his game. Like I don't think he has like a high ceiling or anything, but he plays hard. He's he's a good player. Jalen Green and Bradley Beal, I don't really believe in them at all this year. Again, they were just kind of there because they are top 100 players, even if I don't believe in them. So that's why they're so low on the list. But yeah, I still think they can be somewhat contributors and still top 100 players. Although I don't think they're going to be, I personally don't believe in them. So,
Well, I got to ask you a question on that. What came into play when you ranked Bradley Beal over Jalen Green? I think some people would look at that ranking in particular and go, well, the Suns, they just traded for Jalen Green and then wanted to simultaneously get rid of Bradley Beal. And we know the shooting guard, the shooting
yeah.
guard rotation in Phoenix was very caked with Jalen Green and Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. We know that factor, but what made you rank Bradley Beal ahead of Jalen Green?
Personally, I feel like they're both inefficient shot checkers. And I personally I don't know what it is about Jalen Green. I don't believe in his ability to be a legitimate contributor on an NBA team. he basically shot the Rockets out of the playoffs last year. And I think even if he's on a team like Phoenix, I don't think he's not really going to work next to Devin Booker. And Bradley Beal, although he did struggle on the Suns last year, I feel like signing the minimum and being in kind of the Clippers organization, I feel like he has a chance to be better than what he is. Like, I mean, they were able to get the best out of guys like Russell Westbrook over the years. They were able to get the best out of guys like, Ben Simmons last year. Like, the Clippers have a great organization philosophy kind of thing. So that's why I feel like the potential of Bradley Beal on the Clippers is better than Jalen Green on the Suns right now.
I have to agree with that, and I like that one because I don't know. That's a whole different conversation about the Clippers, but that could kind of spark, something new with Bradley Beal. I don't know.
Well, I want to bring up with Bradley Beal too. I think some of Bradley Beal's value over the past couple of years has been a little skewed by his contract, right? Under a $50 million contract, and as the fifth highest paid player in the NBA, Bradley Beal is not worth that money, right? He's not worth that ranking. Yet, if he's going to be on a $5 million contract like he is with the Clippers this year, maybe people start viewing Bradley Beal in a different way, right? And Bradley Beal, even at his age, might be ahead of somebody like Jalen Green, even though they're slotted right next to each other on your list, Ian. But Bradley Beal, considering he's with the Clippers, considering he's with an established coaching staff, an established somewhat rotation. I know their rotation's very new. I talked about them the other day, but somewhat of an established culture there in Los Angeles. Bradley Beal could definitely boost his stock and put himself back into the goodwill of the hearts of the NBA community, because with that $50 million contract, certainly took himself out of that conversation over the past couple of years. However, getting even further down into the rankings here, 90 to 81. 90 to 81. So as we move down the list, 90 to 81, here's who you have, Ian. At number 90, our guy, Peyton Pritchard. At number 89, another one of our guys, Anthony Simons. So Pritchard and Simons right next to each other. We're going to have to talk about that one for sure. 88, R.J. Barrett. 87, Stephon Castle. 86,
Oh, no,
Cam
that's
Thomas.
Devin Vassell.
Oh, wait, what? Oh, number 87?
Yeah,
oh, my bad,
87,
folks.
Devin
My bad. Devin Vassell, number 87. All right, Stephon Castle not on the list here. 87, Devin Vassell. 86, Cam Thomas. 85, CJ McCollum. 84, Jordan Poole. 83, Miles Turner. 82, Michael Porter Jr. And 81, the player who Michael Porter Jr. was traded for, Cam Johnson. So that's who you have there on the list, Ian. We're gonna have to update the ticker there. No Stephon Castle at 87. It's Devin Vassell, folks. But what are some of your initial thoughts on 90 through 81, Ian?
Yeah, 90 to 81. It's kind of a continuation of the inefficient shot chucker type of aspect player, but at the same time also legitimate kind of role player contributors. That's kind of where I see the 90 to 81 part of the list. Peyton Pritchard and Anthony Simons. I'm not going to lie to you. I had Anthony Simons a lot higher last year. It's just going into last year, he had a rough season a little bit. I think he was at like 74 last year. And I would have had him lower regardless of if he was on the Celtics or not. So, but the fact that he is like a little lower is kind of interesting in my opinion now that I look at it. But yeah, R.J. Barrett, Devin Vassell, Cam Thomas, C.J. McCollum, Jordan Poole. I kind of feel like that's all the same type of player. And like, it's just kind of your preference on who you think is better or not. Miles Turner, Michael Porter Jr., Cam Johnson. Again, just guys who are going to be contributors on their teams moving forward. Michael Porter Jr. I do think he's better than Cam Thomas just because I feel like Cam Thomas still hasn't shown throughout a full season that he can be the number one option on the Nets. And I mean, I don't think Michael Porter Jr. is automatically going to be the number one option. I just think as a player, I would still have Michael Porter Jr. over Cam Thomas right now for just like what they can bring to a team.
Well, I got to say, the number one option conversation with the Nets right now is pretty horrid. I mean, Michael Porter Jr.
It's kind of...
And Cam Thomas, if I'm not mistaken, Cam Thomas is still a free agent, correct?
Thought I think the Nets offered him a contract recently. They offered him like a 2-year, $14 million contract
which
or
is a
something.
far cry from what he was talking about getting in the middle of the regular season. But the Nets, regardless, I mean, that team is definitely going to be a bottom feeder team in the Eastern Conference. Couple of their guys in this category right here, but a lot of people are going to talk about the Simons and Pritchard. They're ranked right next to each other. There's that in there as well. I would say if I'm looking at your list, right? Obviously, we're going to get into the categories a little higher than this ranking right here, but do you think people would have a rift with you having Miles Turner at 83? Any comments on that?
Not really, honestly. I don't think so. Um, it's kind of interesting. Just I was kind of looking over the list, and I'm like, would I rather have this guy over Miles Turner? And I couldn't justify putting him really any higher than I did. So, like honestly, it's like it was weird. His performance kind of soured me from the finals, where he didn't really do much to help the Pacers anyway. And now that he's with Milwaukee, I still really don't know what he's going to be alongside of Giannis. So I feel like having him this low is fine for now. But I mean, we'll just have to see what he does this year.
Yeah, he's
Well,
one of those hot media commodities right now. That's what I'll
Oh
say.
yeah.
Hot media commodities. I don't know if his value is up there, but I feel like the community might value him higher just because he was in the finals with the Pacers. Anytime you start on a finals team, I feel like your value is going to be increased just a little bit.
No, for sure.
a question I kind of want to piggyback off of Seamus saying Stephon Castle, though. Do you see him potentially being in the mix of honorable mention players as well? Because I didn't think I saw him on your list, but is he one guy that you would mix in there, or do you think he's still has something to prove and needs to prove himself a little more before he's on this list?
Yeah, I still think he needs at least like to show another season. He did have a good year with the Spurs last year, obviously won Rookie of the Year. Most of that came though at like the end of the season. So like most of it came when the games weren't exactly, they weren't as exactly high potential. Wemby was gone for most of this time, so he kind of turned into the number one option. I still think Stephon Castle is going to be a great player. I mean, I was thinking about trading him for Jaylen Brown earlier in the offseason.
No.
So, I mean, but yeah, I do think he can eventually make this list. But for now, it's kind of hard to put guys that either just got drafted or like a year or two in the league unless they really show out. Like, they really have to show out their rookie year.
Yeah, and Stephon Castle, I find it interesting you brought up in that conversation that he did a lot of his work near the end of the year when the games weren't as high. They didn't own as high of stakes as the beginning of the year. When think about the beginning of the year is number one, there's an aspect of the teams not caring too much because it's November, December, the games don't mean too much. But then at the same time, teams are still in the mix for the playoff hunt, right? At the beginning of the year. At the end of the year, that's what I questioned about the Celtics record at the end of the year. Even during those games, when the Celtics were going 14-2 in their last 16 games of the season, I question, even though this is a great record, is this real? Right? Is this real against some of these opponents? And I love that you brought that up right there because I think that's just a reality that we all need to face at the end of an NBA season every single year. And I think people forget that in the moment. But then when we look back at it in hindsight, right, it's one of those aspects of an NBA season that's part of the flow of the NBA season that isn't always factored into every single conversation when it comes to players and teams. And I mean, two perfect examples right there, Stephon Castle and, well, I'll give multiple examples. Stephon Castle and Baylor Shireman we talked about the other day, and then of course the Celtics team in general. However, moving down the list to the 70s. We're down to the 70s, folks. 80 to 71. At number 80, Herb Jones. Number 79, a former Celtic champion. That is number 79, Kristaps Porzingis. 78, Chet Holmgren. 70. Wait, Chet Holmgren for real? Number 70? No, that's Isaiah Hartenstein. Sorry, folks. Isaiah Hartenstein there at 78. I was like, wait a minute. There's no way Chet Holmgren is this low on the list. Sorry, folks. We have Isaiah Hartenstein at number 78, 77, Nikola Vucevic, 76, Josh Hart, 75, Andrew Nimhard. 74, Jalen Suggs. 73, Lugans Dort. 72, another former Celtic champion, Drew Holiday. And number 71, now Drew Holiday's teammate, Denny Avdia. So, Ian, take us through this portion of your list. There's one question in particular I want to ask after you kind of skim through your list here, but I don't know if you know it already or not, but we'll talk about it. It might reside around the Portland Trailblazers. But what are your initial thoughts on this area of the list?
Yeah, 80 to 71, these are your higher level players. Like, these aren't the guys that are either bench guys or, like, third or fourth options. These are kind of, in my opinion, I feel like they're more solid pieces to a team and higher contributors. Uh, Herb Jones, I really like. I think if he can stay healthy for more than like 50 games a season, I feel like him and a guy we can talk about later in the list have a really good chance of really performing well with the Pelicans. Porzingis, Hartenstein, Vucevic, I kind of feel like they're all generally the same kind of player, in my opinion. They don't all have the same attributes as a player, but they all kind of feel the same to me. Jalen Suggs, Lou Dort, Holiday, same thing. Hart, Nemhard, Suggs, Dort, and Holiday, kind of the same thing. And Avdia, I didn't really know where to put him, but he did have a really good year last year, and he does look like he's progressing into more of a well-rounded player. So I'm gonna, I guess, buy high on Avdia going into next season with the Blazers.
Well, that's my one question to you, Ian, on this is what I mean, you kind of answered it a little bit right there, but Avdia, I think a lot of people would look at this list and go, wow, you have Avdia over guys like Cam Johnson, Michael Porter Jr. I mean, all the guys behind him. I mean, think about Drew Holiday, Dort in the finals, of course, the last 2 years, both of those guards just hounding players in the finals. But Avdia, he's ranked above all of those guys. But what is your further elaboration on that? And what is your further case for Avdia ranking in at 71 over some of those names?
Yeah, I just kind of feel like, as number one options on teams go, Avdia feels like the number one option on the Blazers. And comparing that to other guys who, obviously you can't take a whole lot of stock with the Trailblazers because the Trailblazers didn't really compete for anything last year. But I don't know, just the way that he plays, I don't know, it feels like a guy, maybe like Danilo Gallinari kind of thing, back when Gallinari was like a legit player kind of guy, like with the Knicks and with the Nuggets kind of stuff. Like, that's kind of how I feel with Avdia, and I feel like he has a chance that he could still be like a number one option on a team. And the way that he played with the Trailblazers last year kind of enforced that. And like, I did a lot of video watching with Anthony Simons, but you notice you notice Avia a lot. Like, he is like the guy when it comes to Portland's offense. So I think having him up here is pretty good. And next to number 70 and going upwards, I feel like you can all kind of classify them as similar players.
Yeah, and I wanna hit on this conversation too. Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis make it into this category of players, or at least the 71 to 80 range, right? Uh, what how much did last year? And I shouldn't even say last year, but the playoff run last year, right? The 2025 playoff run for the Celtics. How much did that playoff run factor into you moving Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis into this realm of player? Because it seems as if after the 24 title, they may have been ranked maybe higher on this list, right? But then right now
Definitely.
we're talking about Kristaps Porzingis behind centers like Vucevic and Hardenstein and Holiday behind names like Abdia, and even going further on your list, we'll get to these guys like Ingram, Levine, DeRozan, all those guys. But how much of a factor did the Celtics playoff run play into you ranking Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis where you did relative to some of their peers around them?
No, it definitely did. Um, I mean, the entirety of last year kind of, I wouldn't say soured my opinions of them, because I still love them as players. I still love them as players on the Celtics, but uh, Holiday, you could tell, was kind of showing his age a little bit, at least when it came to the offensive side of the ball. I mean, 2024, he was shooting like 60% from three when it came to corner threes. Like, he was a legitimate weapon for the Celtics in 2024. And last year, he just kind of wasn't the same weapon. And as he's continuing to age and he's moving on to a team like the Trailblazers, and he could end up getting traded again, depending on if he wants to stay in Portland. But him and Porzingis as well, he had a really injury-plagued year last year, in the entirety of the year, and obviously the playoff run did not really help his case. I feel like he'll actually be pretty good in Atlanta alongside Trae Young and all of the young guys that they have over there. It's just you've been burned one too many times when it comes to Porzingis as somebody that had him on your team. So I'm just I'm being cautiously optimistic with that, putting him lower on the list. Last year I had him a lot higher than I thought. Last year I had Drew Holiday at 40 and I had Porzingis at 45. So
a great context there
that kind of tells you kind of how much their play last year kind of determined into the rankings this year.
So would you say, like, if they have a successful year, for example, if Porzingis, has an injury prone, not injury prone, like an injury-free season or less injured, and he shows dominance, he could again be higher up on this list. But right now, he kind of fizzled out because of the injuries and everything. Would you say?
No, for sure, definitely. And in 2023, I had him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Had him 58 in 2023. So I kind of have him in this general area kind of thing. But that was after his season in Washington, where he was a contributor before he came to the Celtics. So if he can be a contributor, he's definitely could go higher on this list. I have no doubt in my mind about that. It's just like I have to see it happen first.
Right. And as we move down the list here into the 60s, moving down into the 60s now. Number 70. Well, this is the range, 70 to 61 here, folks. Number 70, Brandon Ingram. At number 70, 69, Zach LaVine, 68, DeMar DeRozan, 67, Paul George, 66, Naz Reid, 65, Kobe White, 64, Fred VanVleet, 63, Jalen McDaniels, or rather Jaden McDaniels. I don't know why I wrote down Jalen McDaniels, his brother, but Jaden McDaniels. And number 62, Mikal Bridges. Number 61, Alex Caruso. I got to say, Ian, I'm reading that. I don't know why I put Jalen McDaniels in there. I mean, Jalen McDaniels, I don't know. He's definitely not making this list. That's Jaden McDaniels. But I'm looking at this. I'm looking at 70 to 61, Ian, and the thing that pops out to me right away is Naz Reid at 66. Naz Reid at 66, below guys like Kobe White, Fred VanVleet, and even his teammate Jaden McDaniels. What is your explanation over that ranking right there?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Naz Reid he could be conceived as a little low on this list. However, I don't know. It's weird with Naz Reid because, I don't know, maybe it's just I don't really know where to put him when it comes to the ranking of hierarchy of player, because he was Sixth Man of the Year 2024. Obviously, he's contributed to the Timberwolves last year without Karl Anthony Towns. And I don't really know what's going to happen moving forward, but he could end up eventually being the starting center for the Timberwolves. However, at the same time, I feel like he has flaws in his game that, like, it feels like he's not a dominant paint presence when it comes to it, at least from what I've seen. He kind of plays his game on the perimeter, which is good, but when he's not hitting shots, he can easily shoot the Timberwolves out of games. And I don't know. I kind of feel like right now, where he is as a player, I kind of feel like he's in the same kind of realm as a guy like Kobe White, who is continuing to progress with his career right now, and he played pretty good last year, and I think he has a chance to do better this year. So I feel like a guy like Kobe White is pretty good alongside Naz Reid. I feel like they can both elevate the same kind of way, and who knows, if he has another good year next year, he could easily be higher on this list.
And I want to ask another question too on this range of players. 69 to 67, right? You have Paul George at 67, 68, you have DeMar DeRozan, and 69, Zach LaVine. We could throw Brandon Ingram into that conversation as well. I would slot some of those players into the same category. But what made you rank those players in that particular order? Zach LaVine, I understand, the contract, it's the same conversation with Bradley Beal, right? Where his contract is just a little bit hefty for the player that he is. But some people would say, oh, Paul George, he's washed. DeMar DeRozan, he's washed. And meanwhile, Zach LaVine, he's one of the more efficient three-point shooters or just pure shooters in the entire NBA. And then Brandon Ingram, he's been injured, but we know what he can do at a star level. What made you rank those players in the way you did from 67 to really 70?
Yeah, so Paul George, I feel like out of the four of those guys, I still feel like has a chance to bounce back. I think he's coming off another injury, I think, with the Sixers, but I don't know. I have a hard time. Maybe it's just nostalgia, but I have a hard time feeling like Paul George is going to be that bad with the Sixers next year, depending on what happens when he comes back. So I feel like Paul George has a chance to be better. So I felt like putting him around this range was smart because I feel like as DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Brandon Ingram, it kind of feels like they're at a point where you kind of just have to accept that these guys are who they are. Brandon Ingram, I know people have been saying forever that he is a lot better than people say he is. I personally never seen it. Like he was kind of good with the Pelicans, but he can never stay healthy. He got traded to the Raptors of all teams, and I don't really know what that's going to look like alongside like Scotty Barnes and the rest of that Raptors core that they have up there. And I don't know. I've been slowly putting Zach LaVine lower and lower on the list every year. Like last year, I had him at 61. So having him down here, I kind of don't believe in his game really at all. Like his game does not contribute to winning whatsoever. We saw that with Chicago. We saw that with the limited times he was with the Kings last year. And honestly, DeMar DeRozan, he's kind of at the same point. Like their games don't really contribute to winning anymore. And it kind of sucks to say, but it just kind of is what it is.
That's certainly, if you talk about some of those players at the end there, it's a little it's one of the we recently, right, with all the Laker news around Marcus Smart, right?
Yeah.
It's been a summer of if you showed this to us in 2017, we would probably vomit all over the place. Same thing with some of these players at the bottom here, like Paul George and DeMar DeRozan, even Brandon Ingram and Zach LaVine. You could slot them in as well. They weren't as proven as DeRozan and George when it came to winning, but seeing them ranked so low on this list and ranking and seeing them ranked below some of the players on this list, I mean it's they're not washed. Let's face it, they're not completely washed because there's value there. They're still a top 100 player in the NBA. That is not easy to do, to be a top 100 player in the world. But seeing them ranked this low, we all know their peak was around top 20 in the NBA. So the fact they're down here near 70 is definitely a shell shock to the brains of all of us from 2017, right? Or the 2017 versions of us. However, as we make our way further down the list here, we're into the 50s, rankings 60 to 51. At number 60, Ian, you have Dyson Daniels of the Atlanta Hawks, number 59, another player moving to the Southeast this season. Norman Powell, number 58. Austin Reeves, number 57. Jared Allen, 56. Draymond Green, a rival of the Boston Celtics, a player rival, one of the only player rivals in the league right now, the Celtics. Number 55, Trey Murphy. Number 54, Rudy Gobert. Number 53, Julius Randle. 52, OG Anunoby. And number 51, Jalen Johnson. So that concludes 60 through 51 for Ian. But Ian, what are some of your thoughts on the 60 to 51 ranking here?
Yeah, these are kind of, I feel like it could be controversial placements. I really like what Dyson Daniels did last year, and I feel like he can continue, building upon what he did last year. His defense is ridiculous. Like even I remember the two games that we played him in the in-season tournament. The in-season tournament game they had at TD Garden. Like he was just a monster on defense, and I think he's going to continue that. Norman Powell, I didn't really know what to think about him because he had a really good year with the Clippers last year. He did kind of fall off in the playoffs, but I do feel like on a team like the Heat, who don't necessarily have a whole lot outside of Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo, I feel like he could slot in there and continue doing what he's doing. Plus, the whole Heat culture thing always turns guys like that into pretty solid players. So Austin Reeves, kind of same thing. He had a rough playoff run, but I'm not holding it against him this kind of way because the Lakers were such a shit show last year that I feel like he didn't really have much of a choice. He kind of got screwed when it came to everything that happened. Jared Allen, a little bit of the same thing. Honestly, Jared Allen kind of did the same thing. Draymond Green, I always kind of have him around this 50 range because as much as I don't want to believe that he's still a contributor, you watch Warriors games and you can't help but not notice Draymond Green is still like their entire defense. He's been their entire defense since like 2015 and he's still doing it. Like it's kind of hard not it's kind of you don't want to accept it, but it kind of is going to happen. Trey Murphy, I love Trey Murphy. Low-key wanted him to be a Celtic. But him and Herb Jones
We're big on Trey Murphy here at Celtics Talk Weekly. I'll say I think we're all big on Trey Murphy.
Yeah, Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle kind of feel like have the same role on the Timberwolves, so I kind of feel like they're kind of there. OG Anunoby had a really good playoffs against the Celtics, and he can be a legit contributor on the Knicks, and I feel like with a new coach, that's not Tom Thibodeau. He won't get run into the ground. And Jalen Johnson, he's coming off a torn ACL, but at the same time, I am also really high on Jalen Johnson. I thought I had him as most improved player going into last year. So I love Jalen Johnson. I think him alongside Trae Young and alongside Kristaps Porzingis and Dyson Daniels, he has a chance to turn into a legit like star level player in my opinion. So that's why I have him this high. And like I'm kind of maybe taking a gamble on that, but I also feel like he can turn into like a star level player.
Well, a question I have too is I noticed this a little bit is some of the players, like for example Randall and Rudy, like slotted in right next to each other. When you were working on this, were you kind of like looking at teams too and you're like, all right, they go right next to each other, they kind of provide the same, like for the Timberwolves for example, so let's put them right there, might as well.
No, I've noticed that because I did that a few times when I had like Pritchard and Simons next to each other, or Avi and Holiday, or Levine and DeRozan. I didn't necessarily plan that. I think it just kind of happened that way. So,
yeah,
but at the same time, I mean, it kind of works because when it comes to players like that on teams, if they're kind of a similar aspect to them, I feel like putting them next to each other is not really the worst possible thing.
Think about walking into the Sacramento practice facility. Who's demanding the ball in the hierarchy of the Kings, right? Is it DeRozan? Is it Levine? I mean, efficiency nerds would say Levine, but then DeRozan, we all know the history behind him as well, and both of those guys can be somewhat around the same ranking, as of course your list shows here. But I do want to ask a question about number 54 on this list, Rudy Gobert. I feel like people might have the most grift with that one. What would you say to the people who believe you have Rudy Gobert ranked a little bit too low on your list?
Too low? Oh, I don't think I have him too low, honestly.
No, well, but I know you don't think you have him too low, but say people who are more of the people who are on the case about him being a former defensive player of the year, all of the defensive stats around the rim when he's on the floor, those people who believe that Rudy Gobert is somebody you can slot into your defense and automatically, I mean, your defensive rating is going to be in the low 100s, right? What would you say to those people who are more for Rudy Gobert ranked, or who are for Rudy Gobert owning a higher ranking on this list?
Yeah, personally, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't hate Rudy Gobert. I think he's a legit contributor on the Timberwolves. I mean, you saw him carry defenses for years in Utah, and ever since he's been on the Timberwolves, he's basically carried their defense as well. So I don't hate Rudy Gobert, but at the same time, I have a hard time putting him over guys like Julius Randle, for example. Julius Randle scores the ball and can play tough defense at times. I feel like what Rudy Gobert does, I feel like is more closer to Draymond Green than it is to like anybody higher on the list. So I feel like having him and Draymond Green, I feel like they're similar players. They're both defensive first kind of guys who basically carry their team's defense. But at the same time, your offensive limitations, it's kind of hard to put them higher, in my opinion, when there are so many talented offensive level players. in the NBA right now and in the league at all times. So that's kind of why I have him kind of in the middle of the list, just because I feel like having him super low is a little disrespectful. Like, you can't have him down near like Jordan Poole or something like in the 80s. Like, no matter how much you don't like him. But I do feel like having him in the middle of the road highlights the fact that he does carry a defense, but at the same time, his offensive limitations just don't add as much value, in my opinion, versus other guys who do.
Yeah, and to give more context to the Rudy Gobert conversation, moving on to the top 50 of this list. Number 50, we have Aaron Gordon. Ian has Aaron Gordon, rather, here. Number 49, Tyler Hero. Almost a Celtic in 2019, not quite, but Tyler Hero at 49. 48, Damian Lillard. 47, Amin Thompson. 46, Lowry Markkanen. 45, Ivica Zubac. 44, Darius Garland. 43, Desmond Bain. 42, LaMelo Ball. And 41, Tyrese Maxey. So taking us through that portion of the list as we move into the top 50, Ian, what are some of your thoughts on that area of the list? And it does give some context to the whole Rudy Gobert conversation of maybe some of the players he wasn't ranked over.
Yeah, like guys, for example, like Aaron Gordon, like you saw what he did with the Nuggets in the playoffs. I mean, he was almost their best player in that Thunder series against versus Jokic. I mean, I guess. I mean, but at the same time, like Tyler Hero, he's not the greatest defensive wise, but because he is such an offensive level threat with the Miami Heat, like he basically carries their offense at times. So I feel like that's a little bit more contributing. Damian Lillard, I didn't really know where to put him on this list. I do think when he comes back, he'll still be like a guy for the Trailblazers, but obviously he's not playing this year. So, but at the same time, I feel like he could still be a top 50 player when he comes back, even if he's going to be older. Uh, I guess we're just gonna have to see about that. Amen Thompson, though, I love Amen Thompson. Amen Thompson, I think, just kind of like Jalen Johnson I was talking about earlier, Trey Murphy kind of thing. This guy showed out last year in a limited role on the Rockets, to say the least. And Jalen Green kind of took over most of his shots, in my opinion. The fact that now you have Kevin Durant alongside you with the way Amen Thompson can play, you can easily put him at the 2, have Durant at the 3. You'll have Fred VanVleet there, Jabari Smith Jr. there, Alfred Sengun there. I mean, you're kind of setting him up for success. Like, he basically has every tool around him to not only become a better scorer that he was last year, he can become a much better facilitator. He's still a demon on defense. Like, I love the potential of Amen Thompson, so that's why I put him this high, and I feel like he could have an even more of a breakout year than he did last year. Larry Markkinen, Zubac, kind of same thing. They're both good players. Kind of hard to put them any lower, in my opinion. Darius Garland, Desmond Bain, LaMelo Ball, Tyrese Maxey. Low key might be able to put Tyrese Maxey higher now that I think about it in hindsight, but kind of feel like they're all similar-ish type players, offensive heavy ball handlers that don't necessarily play the best defense at times. So that's kind of where my thinking was around that kind of range. But I had a lot of people telling me Maxey was too low, but at the same time, I don't know, maybe I just feel like he's still that kind of player. But I can admit he is definitely deserving to be higher on other people's lists if they do make one.
And I should have roped this into the Rudy Gobert conversation. I hate to keep it on Rudy Gobert, but the question here is, what made you put Zubac over Gobert?
I don't know. I love what Zubac does on the Clippers. I feel like he's just a monster on both sides of the ball. And like, I've seen the way he plays against Rudy Gobert as well. Like, he can basically physically overpower anybody at the center position. And I don't know. Maybe I just like Zubac. I think that's just what it is. I think I just like Zubac over Gobert.
And that's everybody keep that in mind with these lists as well. It's everybody's personal rankings, right? It's everybody's personal liking, and I can tell in your list too. And you like defense, all right, which I love. I gotta say, the defense is definitely valued within your list here.
And may I say, for this being just a personal list, like, I wouldn't be mad about this if this was posted, on the NBA or whatever. It's not, it's not like one of those controversial ones where it's like, all right, this player completely slipped. It's not like that.
Well, right. It's not one of those lists where they're looking to
Have a
rank
spark, have a
players in a
flame.
clickbait manner so that they
Yeah.
can extract views on it. I mean, we do it the
No,
natural
for
way.
sure.
We go on live and talk about it, folks. That's what we do. However, moving
Oh,
on to the top 40 of this list, as we're getting pretty close to the end here. Number 40, Franz Wagner. Number 39, Scotty Barnes. Number 38, Derek White. Number 37, Jamal Murray. 36, De'Aaron Fox. 35, Kyrie Irving, a former Celtic, right there. And hey, well, number 38, have to give him a shout out too. Derek White, our guy, Derek White, a Celtic right there. But number 34, Bam Adebayo. 33, Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr. Number 32, his teammate, Ja Morant. And number 31, Evan Mobley. So, Ian, take us through that portion of the list right there as we make our way into the top 40.
yeah. The reason why I was talking about Tyrese Maxey so much before was because people were saying that Derek White was a little too high in their opinions. Um, I'm sorry, I can't. I can't put Derek White much. I feel like Derek White is kind of perfectly suited as like a top 40 player in the NBA. I think over the last few years, I've had him around that point every year, just because I don't know. I feel like what he does for the Celtics, the fact that he's kind of similar to Rudy Gobert a little bit. He is their defense at times. Like Derek White can do everything on defense. He is everything on offense sometimes. And with no Jason Tatum this year, he has a chance to be even better as an offensive player, in my opinion. Like he could legit be an all-star this year because of how, bad the Eastern Conference is. But, it wouldn't shock me if he was an all-star this year coming up. Franz Wagner, Scotty Barnes, I do feel like are still similar players to each other. Ironically, I had Scotty Barnes over Derek White like one spot last year, but I don't really know why I have him this year. But I don't really know how I feel about either one of these players, honestly. Like, I can't deny how talented they are, but they can very much easily shoot their teams out of games. We saw Franz Wagner do it in the playoffs against Celtics. Scotty Barnes has not been to the playoffs yet, but I still, I don't know, something weird, something off about Scotty Barnes, in my opinion, that I just don't really know why I can't put him any higher. Jamal Murray, De'Aaron Fox, Kyrie Irving, all kind of similar guards, kind of, in my opinion, right now. Obviously, people can say Kyrie might be a little too low. He's coming off a torn ACL as well. So it's kind of, I'm not trying to take injuries into it, but at the same time, I still do kind of feel like his skill set is similar to a De'Aaron Fox and Jamal Murray right now. Bam Adebayo, Jaren Jackson, and Evan Mobley are kind of similar as well. They're all kind of a similar type of attribute. And Ja Morant, I didn't really know where to put Ja because it's kind of hard. I couldn't think of him as a top 30 player right now, just because it does feel like every time he tries to build momentum and every time he might be on the verge of like a blossoming into this kind of like upper echelon player, he gets injured somehow. So like, I don't know, like in the playoffs last year, he was having a really good game against the Thunder in the first round, and he got clipped out from under him by Lou Dort. And it's not really his fault, but it just kind of happens that way. And also, I don't really know if there's an A1 player on the Grizzlies right now, because Jaren Jackson Jr. has for sure been a number one option when Ja Morant's not there. And so, I don't know. I feel like it's a little hard to discern that. That's kind of where I'm at with that list right now.
Well, one thing I have to say too, and I've talked a lot with Seamus about this, is like, if the Celtics, and this is a crazy world, but if they ever did move off of Derek White, I would feel comfortable trading him for a player in that caliber. Like I wouldn't trade him for anything lesser, I don't think. Maybe if it was like relatively close, but I wouldn't trade him for more than that as well. So it's like, I like Derek White there. And one other thing I have to say about this list too is I feel like the Kyrie one is a controversial one. However, like I love how you backed it up coming off of that ACL tear. It's like, where will he be now? Like after that, and it's like I could still see him around a Ja Morant type player. I could see Kyrie Irving mixed in with those. So I like that one.
Yeah, and I pardon the technical difficulties there. Yeah, a couple technical difficulties on the side. However, we now move into the top 30 of this list as I get everything calibrated once again. The top 30 of this list, and this is how it reads here. Number 30, James Harden. Number 30, James Harden. Number 29, Zion Williamson. Number 28, Domantas Sabonis. Number 27, Jimmy Butler. Number 26, Chet Holmgren. Number 25, Alperen Şengün. 24, Kawhi Leonard. 23, Trey Young. 22, Carl Anthony Towns. And 21, Jalen Williams. So, Ian, of course, you know the routine by now. Take us through this portion of the list.
Yeah, James Harden, I do feel like is also in the similar realm of guys like Kyrie Irving and De'Aaron Fox kind of thing. But at the same time, I mean, he had an incredible season last year. Obviously, he had his playoff failings, but that's just kind of who he is at this point. So I wasn't really factoring that into too much, but I still love James Harden as a player. Same thing with Zion. I'm never gonna quit Zion. It's hard for me. A lot of people have given up on Zion's potential as being a star in the league. I just can't do it. Every time I watch him, I'm like, yeah, this guy is still going to be, an upper echelon type player. Just give him time. Uh, maybe that's bad thinking on my part, but what do you know? Domantas Sabonis, Jimmy Butler, Chet Holmgren, Alfred Sengun, all kind of similar areas in my opinion. Sabonis, the Kings are going to be in a rough position. Who knows if he's even going to be on the Kings next year? Jimmy Butler had his whole thing with Miami last year, but he played really well with Golden State. Chet Holmgren, Alfred Şengün. Some people could say Holmgren's better. I think Şengün has more potential to be better, in my opinion. I don't know. Chet Holmgren, I think, has more potential to be a guy like Kristaps Porzingis than maybe an upper echelon type of player. But I can't deny the fact that he was on a championship team with the Thunder, and he played an important role in that. So I have to have him that high. Kawhi Leonard, it kind of sucks having to put him so low, but at the same time, it's like, I just can't. I can't continue to put him as like a high top 20 player anymore, just because of the injuries and how you never really know what you're going to get from him on a year-to-year basis. Trey Young, Carl Anthony Towns, both similar players in my opinion. Both I feel like are right here. I've actually kind of softened my stance on Trey Young over the years. I was not really a big fan of him over time. I thought he was closer to like, the LaMelo Ball type of ranking, like around the 40-ish. But over time, I softened the blow on that, and I feel like Trey Young is legit. He's a legit star in this league. Same thing, Carl Anthony Towns. And Jalen Williams, you could have argued he had the chance to be finals MVP last year just because of how great he was for the Thunder in a couple of those games. And obviously, he has the potential. He was all defense. He was all NBA last year. Like, he has the potential to be, a
With
legit
a
star in
torn
the
ligament
league.
in his wrist as well.
Exactly. So he is, although, some people might not like his social media posts or, people could call him corny, but the Celtics also had a superstar that people call corny, and look how well it worked out for us. And it obviously worked out for him because he won a championship. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
And two questions immediately pop up when it comes to this area of your rankings. Number one, Zion Williamson at number 21. What made you keep Zion Williamson within the top 30 of the NBA? As some may say, his health concerns, some of his play. When he actually plays, he's pretty good, but some of his availability concerns, Zion Williamson has definitely put himself into a lower category of player than where he probably should slot in the NBA. But what made you keep Zion Williamson in the top 29, even top 30 of the NBA rankings here?
I just can't quit him. I just can't do it. I can't deny the fact of how insanely talented he is. The fact that he's not even like a dominant center. Like, he's not even like Ivica Zubac kind of like he's that level of strong, but he's 6'7". Like, he's a power forward. He's has one of the most unique games in the NBA right now. And like you say, when he's healthy, he is a legitimate all-star, superstar, all-NBA type player, in my opinion. But I don't know. I can't quit him. I can't put him super low just yet. I still feel like he has time. What is this, year 6, year 7, maybe,
Let's see.
of Zion in the league? He drafted 2019, so I don't know. At some point, he has to put it together, and
Be year
this year
7, I think. Year 7.
feels like the year. Feels like the year it could happen.
Well, I have a question for you, Ian. If this is not the year and it's another rocky year that we've seen from Zion, is this where you are? Is this kind of your last? All right, I'm throwing him in there, and if he doesn't do anything, he's going lower. Is this kind of your last dice roll, or do you still have a couple more years that you want to put faith in him, or is this the season to prove it?
It depends. If he's mostly healthy throughout the year next year and he's averaging close to like 27, 28 a game, and maybe he gets the Pelicans into the play-in, maybe he gets hurt again in the play-in, but I don't know. If he can put together just a solid year, be an all-star, be maybe all NBA third team type player, if he can do that next year, he's 100% staying kind of around this area. If he doesn't, and he's kind of injury prone, maybe he's closer to, I don't know, maybe he's closer to the Franz Wagner, Derek White, Scotty Barnes kind of range. But I just feel like it's hard to put him that low just because of how immensely talented he is. But I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see what happens next year. But right now I have a hard time moving him there, even in the future, thinking about it.
And another question, you touched on this a little bit earlier when you talked about Trae Young and Kawhi Leonard, but I think a lot of people will look at that Trae Young, Kawhi Leonard ranking and maybe question it a little bit. What is your further case for Kawhi Leonard being ranked behind Trae Young?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I originally had Trae Young behind Kawhi Leonard, but at the same time, I thought about it, and it's like I would feel more confident right now in Trae Young leading a team to maybe an Eastern Conference Finals appearance than I would Kawhi Leonard leading a team like the Clippers to a Western Conference Finals appearance type of thing. So I feel like, I don't know, man. Like I said, I've softened my takes on Trae Young over the years. I originally absolutely hated him because of the foul baiting and the lack of defense, but you can't deny how much of an offensive explosion he is. And around with the team he has now, in a playoff setting, I would still give my trust to Trae Young. And also Kawhi Leonard last year in that type of playoff setting against the Nuggets. I can't lie to you. Outside of game 1, he didn't really do much. Like, he was good, don't get me wrong, but he was not the superstar player that was carrying the Clippers throughout that series. And so I just kind of feel like the fact that he's also been injured to hell and back over the last few years, you just don't really know what to expect with him right now. I know what I'm going to get out of Trae Young, and I feel like he has a chance to be even better with a good team around him next year.
And that's an interesting way to look at it. The whole who could make a conference finals appearance with their team. I think there are a lot of people out there that would believe the Hawks are a little more likely to make it farther in this year's playoffs, or next year's playoffs rather, than say the Clippers. And I understand some of the conference conversation has, it has a lot to do with that, and it's the circumstances of what conference and which conference each team resides in. But at the end of the day, Trae Young, a little bit younger of a player, and somebody who still owns the potential to lead a good team to a winning place. Unlike, I shouldn't say unlike Kawhi Leonard, but Kawhi Leonard, that team's a little older. I would say there's a little less steam behind the Clippers right now than the Hawks, especially in the Eastern Conference, and definitely an interesting way to look at that, because I would definitely say the Hawks own as much potential as the Clippers this year when it comes to making the conference finals or even making a playoff run in general. However, venturing into the top 20 of this list, we're getting pretty close to the end here, folks. Number 20, another Celtic, our guy, Jaylen Brown. Number 19, Pascal Siakam. Number 18, Paulo Banchero. Number 17, Cade Cunningham. 16, Tyrese Halliburton. 15, Donovan Mitchell. 14, Devin Booker. 13, Kevin Durant. 12, LeBron James. And 11, Anthony Davis, the former teammate of LeBron James. So we're getting into some big hitting names here. We're getting into some big hitters here at the end of this list. But now, as we get into the top 20, I mean, this is where a lot of people like to look at lists, right? It's always the top 20 or the top 25. What are some of your takes on this area of the list, Ian, from 20 to 11?
Yeah, I feel like Jaylen Brown has kind of cemented himself as a top 20 player in the NBA. Some people you can call it Celtics bias if you want to, but you can't deny the fact Jaylen Brown he's a top 20 player in the NBA. That's what he is. It's just kind of the way that he's playing, the way he has been playing, the way he has a chance to even be better next year. Like, he's going to be the number one option. He has a shot to maybe put himself up a little higher next year. You never know. But depending on what happens with Jaylen Brown next year, I still feel like he's top 20, regardless of what you want to say. Pascal Siakam, incredible playoff run. Although some people might think Jaylen Brown's better, so I couldn't not put Pascal Siakam over him just because of the way that he played in the playoffs last year. Paolo Banchero, Cade Cunningham, both really young players that have a chance to, I think, have a huge leap next year. Like, those two have a chance to be legit faces of their teams and be legit contenders in the East. Like, it wouldn't even surprise me if both the Pistons and the Magic had like a top 4 record next year, just because of the leaps that I think that they can have. Tyrese Halliburton, obviously, insane playoff run. If he didn't tear his Achilles, probably would have been even higher. Probably would have put him at number 10, maybe. But it's kind of hard because he's not playing the entire. That's already been confirmed. He's not playing the entire year next year, so it's a little hard putting him top 15, top 10 because of that. Donovan Mitchell, I really like Donovan Mitchell, although he absolutely hates the Celtics. At least that's the way he plays against them. But also, I don't know. We might have to have some uncomfortable conversations about Donovan Mitchell soon. He's only been on pretty good teams with the Jazz and Cavs, and he still never made a conference finals. Might have to have some conversations there. Devin Booker, he's going to be absolutely fucked next year. Pardon my language, but that's
you're good.
That's the only thing you can say about the Phoenix Suns. But he's still going to be the player that he is, and who knows? He's still, he's getting a little older, but he's still going to be that elite number one option guy. Durant, James, Davis, all similar types of guys. Durant, he could probably play really good next year with the Rockets. That wouldn't surprise me if he can stay healthy. LeBron, some people might think LeBron's still a top 10 player. I just don't think he is. I just think you just got to accept it. He's out of the top 10 now. He's damn near 40 years old. Anthony Davis versus number 10 might be a little, might be a conversation to have. I definitely thought about putting Anthony Davis at 10. I think I've had Anthony Davis at 10 like every year I've made a top 100, but I don't know. I feel like just the additions of some people in the top 10 kind of bumped him out a little bit. Plus, I kind of have a feeling about number 10 for some reason that I don't know why. Maybe I'm stupid, but maybe I'll give it kind of like what we talked about with Zion. This is like the last year that I can really think about having number 10 at number 10 right now. So,
yeah, and what I noticed about 11 through 20 here on this list is there's a little old new pull push here, right? There's a little bit of a grappling for the spots between the old and the new, because some of the old, right? Number 11, Anthony Davis. Number 12, LeBron James. Number 13, Kevin Durant. But then you have some of the new. If you look further down the list, number 16, Tyrese Halliburton. Number 17, Cade Cunningham. Number 18, Paolo Banchero. Do you see those 3 players in particular, Halliburton, Cunningham, and Banchero, potentially leaping guys like Davis, James, and even Durant next year?
For sure. Especially if Durant and James have another kind of injury-plagued season like they have over the last few years. Depending on, I don't know, maybe I might be overrating Cunningham and Banchero a little bit, but Tyrese Halliburton for sure. Obviously, he's not going to play next year, so it's going to be a little hard, putting him top 10 right now. But the future, give it like 3-4 years, these guys are going to be in the top 10 of the NBA. It kind of feels like it's set in stone at this point. Like, these guys are elite level players who are the number one option on their teams. And the Eastern Conference doesn't really matter what it is. It's not going to be very good. So if you give Cunningham and Banchero the chance, give it maybe 1 or 2 years, 3 years, you're definitely going to see Halliburton, Cunningham, and Banchero, maybe top 10 players, like 8, 9, 10 kind of players.
Well, a question I have too with Jaylen Brown too is obviously Jaylen Brown is going to be taking on the load for the Boston Celtics this year with Jason Tatum's injury, and you said, a lot of fans might not like this, but like NBA fans, for example, seeing that list. However, the player that he could turn into, do you see him potentially being even in the top 10 or just knocking on the door for it next year for your top 100? Obviously, you don't know because we don't know how he's going to shape out to be, but do you potentially see that in the upcoming year?
I wish I could say yes as a Celtics fan, but at the same time, I don't think so. I think his chance was probably last year, coming off the Finals MVP. If he could have had like another elite season, like even be even better than he was in 2024, I feel like you could maybe have the conversation. But with all of the young guys that are coming up right now, like Banchero and Cunningham and Halliburton, plus the guys that have kind of already cemented themselves as the upper echelon elite players in the NBA, I personally don't think Jaylen Brown can get there, but I would love to be proven wrong. Absolutely love it if Jaylen Brown could be a top 10 player next year. That would be incredible, and that would also mean the Celtics have had a lot of success next year without Jason Tatum. So,
And two players also within this ranking category right here from 20 to 11 that need be mentioned, Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell. You touched on Donovan Mitchell a little bit, but I would say a lot of people there have been a lot of arguments and conversations on social media about either Devin Booker or Donovan Mitchell. Which player would you want on your squad, right? You rank Devin Booker ahead of Donovan Mitchell here at 14, Donovan Mitchell at 15. What is your explanation behind ranking Devin Booker ahead of Donovan Mitchell?
yeah, Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell, it's like you could easily go back and forth. I think it's just a matter of who you prefer. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe if it was my team, who would I rather have on the team that I personally think that can contribute the most to winning a championship? I just feel like Devin Booker, a slight edge, the slightest of edges over Donovan Mitchell, in my opinion. I feel like Devin Booker can do a little more than Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell can be a really, really streaky player at times, but Devin Booker, you kind of always know what you're going to get from him. You're always going to get a high scoring point per game season from him. He's going to be shooting efficiently. He can facilitate. I mean, the Suns had him as their point guard a couple of years ago. Like, he can be a legit kind of player. I don't think he can ever be like a top 10 player, but at the same time, I would just give a little more faith in Devin Booker than I would over Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, and I would tend to. This one's hard for me. I like both players. I gotta say that one's pretty hard for me. So anytime I see those two near each other in the same in the same ranking list, right? It's very interesting how people evaluate those players side by side because they're very similar and they reside on teams that are in different situations. I mean, they were on competitive teams the last couple of years. And I mean, even thinking back to 21, 22, or rather 20, it was the 21 season. It was the
Yeah.
2021 season. Top two in the Western Conference. You had Donovan Mitchell at number one with Utah, and then number two, you had Devin Booker with Phoenix. However, we've been waiting for the entirety of the show. The top 10, folks. The top 10 of Ian's 2025 top 100 NBA player list. Here's how the top 10 reads, folks. Number 10, and I'm sure we'll have conversations over this one. Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid finds himself in the top 10 of Ian's list here. Number 9, Jalen Brunson. Number 8, Steph Curry. Number 7, Victor Wembanyama. Number 6, Anthony Edwards. Number 5, Luka Doncic. Number 4, our guy, our Boston Celtic, Jason Tatum. Number 3, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Number 2, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. And number 1, Nikola Jokic. So that rounds out Ian's top 100 NBA player list. The entire list has officially been revealed on this program, Ian. So top 10. What do you have to say about your top 10 here, Ian?
Now we're going to talk about Joel Embiid. I already know that, but if I had to say why I think Joel Embiid's still a top 10 player, Joel Embiid, when healthy, obviously that's a huge caveat every single time you talk about Joel Embiid, but it's really, really hard to not put him in the top 10. Like, he was just the MVP a couple of years ago, and he just, like, I don't know, he's always been a top 10 echelon type player. He's still an elite player. Nobody can guard him, no matter what you do. You can foul bait all you want. You can talk about that. But Joel Embiid is still an elite player in the NBA. If he can just stay healthy, this might be the last year I'll have him as a top 10 player because of this. But if he stays healthy this year, I mean, the 76ers look really, really poised to do something. Tyrese Maxey's a great player. He's a great point guard. Their newest draft pick, VJ Edgecombe, looks like he could be a really good player, depending on what you can get out of Paul George. It's kind of hard for me not to have Joel Embiid up there just because, he might not be the biggest, he might not be the guy that Celtics fans support a lot because we've had our battles with the 76ers over the years, but the talent of Joel Embiid, I just personally could not leave him off the top 10. Jalen Brunson and Steph Curry. Some people might say Jalen Brunson is better than Steph Curry. I just don't see that. Out of all of the old guys between Curry, Durant, and LeBron, I feel like Curry is still the guy that is the most contributing and can still lead a team to a championship right now with no help. Well, I mean, he has had no help, and he has led a team to a championship. So look at that. That's kind of where I'm at with Steph Curry. Victor Wembanyama and Anthony Edwards, obviously two of the youngest stars that have officially reached the top 10. I didn't have Anthony Edwards in the top 10 last year. Neither did I have Victor Wembanyama. Some people might have thought Edwards was top 10 player last year. I didn't see that, but you can't deny the fact he's led the Timberwolves to back-to-back conference finals appearances, and, you can't really take that away from him. He is a legit, superstar player in the NBA. Same thing with Victor Wembanyama. Even though he had the blood clots, he did get cleared to play again, and kind of like Joel Embiid, nobody can guard him. It doesn't really matter what you can do. He can do everything on the court, and he could easily be a top 5 player in the future, in my opinion. Luka Doncic, he had a rough year. I feel like he had a rough year overall, so I feel like still putting him in the top 5 is okay. I feel like 5 is kind of the basis point. I think the lowest you can have him because of everything that's going on with him, because I still think Jason Tatum is locked in at number 4 no matter what. I know he's coming off the Achilles. Maybe he won't be the exact same player when he comes back, but I don't know, call it Celtics bias. He's kind of locked himself in at number 4 in my eyes. Giannis and Shea, some people might still have Giannis over Shea. I just can't do it. I think Shea's season was so incredible last year with everything that he accomplished that I just kind of had to put him at number 2 at this point. I feel like it's really hard to deny the fact that he is a top 2 player in the world, and you can argue the best player in the world. But I still think Jokic is the best player in the world. Jokic still does everything at an MVP type level, and I feel like not a whole lot of people really argue that Jokic would be number 1, but that's kind of where I'm at with the top 10.
And hitting on number 7 here, Victor Wembanyama. I would say some people definitely are high on Wemby. I mean, come on, let's face it. I mean, Wemby, a lot of people are high on Wemby right now, but some people may argue Wemby, blood clots last year, missed nearly half of the season, and coming off his rookie year, obviously did some incredible things in his rookie year, won Rookie of the Year. But then his second season misses half of the year. Now, it did seem as if he was on track to win Defensive Player of the Year before he was injured in the middle of February. However, Victor Wembanyama, he misses that second half of the season, and it was more like the final third of the season. But what made you put Victor Wembanyama this high at number 7?
I just believe in him. I am one of those people that are super high on Victor Wembanyama, and I still think he has the potential to still be the number 1 player in the world eventually. Obviously, rough season with the blood clots, but at the same time, I just kind of feel like a player like Wemby and the work ethic that he has, I feel like he won't really skip that much of a beat even with that. So I don't know. He takes care of his body so much. Like, you've seen everything. Like, everything that he does has been documented for everything. So I just have a feeling that hopefully a healthy Victor Wembanyama this year is going to break out and become the monster that we can all think he is.
And the question I have is, you go ahead, Seamus. Sorry.
Keep it rolling, Griffin. Come on now.
A question I have, obviously regarding now Jason Tatum, and you could look back at Halliburton and, the players that aren't going to participate in this upcoming season. Where is that going to kind of rank, next year's list? Are they still going to be there, or where do you kind of have them slotted in when we look at next year? Because things are going to shake up and be different, and we're going to be going into the season, and it's very likely that Jason Tatum isn't going to play. So how is that going to kind of shake out? Obviously, that's more so a factor that comes in next year. But do you have any, leaks that you want to give out to us right now?
No, I can definitely see myself putting Jason Tatum a little lower next year. Depending on what happens with guys like Edwards and Wembanyama, maybe a guy like Jalen Brunson even does better than he did last year. Maybe I'd say at lowest, I would probably have Jason Tatum like 7. That would probably be the lowest I can think of, in my opinion, even not playing next year. Depending on what happens, though, he could easily be like number 10 too. So honestly, I wouldn't put him out of the top 10 at all. But he definitely probably won't be number 4 next year, just depending on what happens, if he does come back or if he doesn't come back. So,
and I have to bring attention here to number 5 and number 6, because I think this is another contentious conversation amidst the NBA community. Number 6, you have Anthony Edwards, and number 5, you have Luka Doncic. What made you rank Luka Doncic over Anthony Edwards?
I still think I don't know. Okay, it's interesting because obviously Anthony Edwards is the larger than life personality, and he's probably going to end up being one of the faces of the NBA moving forward. But at the same time, Luka Doncic is that exact same player, and now he went from a team in Dallas where he had to do everything to a team in LA where he still kind of has to do everything, but he's also with LeBron James. So I think Luka Doncic is going to be even better than he was last year. And I mean, you can argue they both played each other in the 2024 playoffs, and Luka won. And Luka was easily the better player in that series. And I mean, some people could argue that Luka is like 4 on this, like should be 4 or 3 on this list, depending on what you think of. I just think Luka Doncic is still the better player overall. I think Anthony Edwards still has stuff that he can work on to become an even more elite player, but Luka Doncic right now, obviously his defense is, his defense, but the fact that Luka Doncic is the player that he is right now, I still think is better than Anthony Edwards, at least in my opinion, going into next year. But Luka Doncic could easily lead the Lakers to another deep playoff run next year. Like, it would not shock me whatsoever if he did. So I don't know. I just, maybe it's just a personal feeling, but I still think Luka Doncic is better than Anthony Edwards right now, just based on history and what they did last year.
And moving all the way up to the top of the list, you have Nikola Jokic at number 1. Last season. Now, I would agree with your top 3 here. Jokic, Shea, Giannis, in some order, right? Those are the top 3 NBA players. I think a lot of people can agree upon that. However, last year, it was very, I don't want to say, was it controversial? I mean, it was fairly controversial, the MVP vote last year. I feel like a lot of people had Shea, but a lot of people were also pointing out that Jokic, I mean, he's having one of his better seasons of his career, and he's been multi-time MVP already. Would you have voted Nikola Jokic for MVP last year, considering we look at your list now and you have him at number 1 here? Would you have voted him? Would you have voted Nikola Jokic MVP in 24-25 last year?
No. No, I wouldn't have. I think Shea would have won it regardless. I mean, the Thunder basically had one of the best historic seasons of all time last year. I mean, Nikola Jokic had one of the best historic seasons of all time, but knowing what the MVP award is, like, at least what it has been over the last few years or so, I just don't think I don't think Jokic would have won it regardless of what he could have done. Like if he had the Nuggets as the number one seed, I still think with the way that maybe if he had the Nuggets as the number one seed, he would have won the MVP. But at the same time, with the way that Shea was playing last year, I mean, he was clear and away the most valuable player. And although I feel like Jokic did have like the best season of his career last year and he didn't win it, Shea still had the best season of his career and had one of the most historic seasons as a team and as a player overall. So I still think Shea was going to win MVP regardless. And I think I still would have voted for Shea to be the MVP.
Well, I want to add in kind of a question after that too, kind of backtracking a little bit to Jason Tatum. Two players that were also injured that I didn't see on your list. And my question is this more so because you don't know nearly how much it's going to go back or you just don't see them in the top 100? Is DeJounte Murray, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Damian Lillard wasn't on there.
Damian Lillard was on the list.
Oh, my bad. I missed that one. Sorry. But DeJounte Murray, and then another name I want to throw out to give you for maybe honorable mention, maybe like knocking at the door, maybe a Nickeil Alexander-Walker potentially.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't really see Nickeil Alexander-Walker as that type of guy. DeJounte Murray definitely probably could have been on here. I'm not going to lie to you.
It's hard though. It's hard. It's hard.
It's definitely hard.
100%.
He definitely probably would have been lower, closer to like the lower 90s kind of guys.
Yeah.
Maybe just because of all the injuries and what he's been dealing with over the last few years. But yeah, he's definitely honorable mention for sure. Probably could have been on the list, honestly, if I thought about it more. But I didn't really think about DeJounte Murray. I didn't think about that until like after I made the list and I kind of like looked over past lists. But yeah, he definitely probably could have been there. But with all of the injuries that he's had, I mean, I don't even know what he's gonna end up being either. So
yeah. And may I give you credit though, because I have to admit, like you taking time and effort to do this, like I feel like if I did this, I would miss so many players, and it definitely helps referring to past ones or obviously better top 100. So, but kudos to you because that's impressive and doing that. I thought this was a good list. I look at this one and I'm not hating your decisions. I honestly like it.
It's
thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And as we close out this list, Ian, any final thoughts on the list in its entirety, or how you made the list, or how the list came about? Any thoughts on the list in its entirety, or some of the reaction on the list as well?
Yeah, definitely takes a long time, but at the same time, it kind of also gives a perspective on like how places like ESPN, who make their top 100 lists every year, it's not hard to try to put together a good list. Obviously if you're not trying to clickbait stuff or whatever, but also I understand why people do when ESPN or like The Ringer or whatever do make their lists. Like it definitely can cause a conversation, and definitely there are a lot of players who are really, really good in this. There's a lot of really, really good players in the NBA. You can easily make like a top 200 list, and it probably still wouldn't be enough. You'd probably still have a bunch of people not on the list that were like, oh, how did you miss this kind of person? Like stuff like that. Like that's just how talented the NBA is. And so you can have legitimate discussions with some players. Like we had, like there was a lot of times like Denny Avdia, like, Eamon Thompson kind of guys. Like there are just a lot of players that you could put a lot of different places, and some people are going to be happy, some people are going to not be happy. But at the end of the day, it's kind of just all a matter of opinion and a matter of what you think and believe to be like the better players when it came to making that kind of list.
Well, I got to say, Ian, I appreciate you for coming on here today and giving your full explanation to that list, because I got to say, I respect the list. I mean, myself, I've made the top 100 lists in the past. You might have even inspired me to make my own. I got to say, it definitely takes a while, but I got to say, I'm a little inspired by your list. But thank you for coming on today, Ian. And you want to plug anything here before we go?
Of course. But yeah, you guys can follow me at Inangelo, IINANGELO, every platform, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, etc. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I appreciate you guys having me on. It was good to talk about the list.
Yes, thank you for coming on, Ian. And that is, of course, going to do it for us here on CTW Live today. As always, I am your host, Seamus Zarlingo. Alongside of me today, Griffin Aldrich, all the way on the other side of the screen, my co-host, and of course, our special guest, Ian Inangelo. Everybody, do not forget to like, subscribe, and follow the Celtics Talk Weekly YouTube channel, and go check out the Instagram, the Twitter as well. Don't forget to hit up Celtics.everyday, and of course, Celtics Nation Rise as well on YouTube and Instagram. However, that's going to do it for us today. As we always say, thank you all for watching, and go Celtics.